Hi, this is Gordon Miller from G3, and we're here to talk about owning your own business. So, I learned some of these lessons I'm going to share with you way too late in the process. If I had known what I knew at age 28 when I started my first business, I would have been so much more successful than I am today already. The great thing is that the things we're going to talk about here are universal. They apply to any kind of business. I've started a total of 10 companies altogether. I started my first company at age 28. That was 23 years ago. I'll be 52 here in a couple weeks. So the great thing is that most of your money is going to be made in your 60s and 70s. In fact, the highest income earning time in your life is in your 60s, and then your second highest is in your 70s, and then your third highest is in your 50s. So it's an amazing opportunity when you start a company young and you can build that company successfully over the years, or build a company and sell it, then you have an opportunity to continue to build value by being either a serial entrepreneur, doing it all over again. I've done it now several times, and it's been a great experience. Not everything has been positive. There have been some mistakes along the way, and I'm happy to share with you some of those mistakes as well. The mistakes are actually almost more important than the successes, because the mistakes taught me something that I needed to be able to use in order to be able to grow and learn from that and not make those same kind of mistakes again. I had a great role model to follow. My father owned several companies in his lifetime. He made a number of mistakes, and the reason he was a perfect role model wasn't because of the millions of dollars that he made in some of his companies. It was actually more to do with the millions of dollars that he lost. And because he lost money over the years. In fact, I used to joke that, over my father's lifetime, he probably made $12 million. Unfortunately, he spent $14 million doing it. And so the reality, though, is that because he lost $2 million, I've been able to keep from losing tens of millions of dollars. And so I want to share some of those experiences with you all as I document the process. I'm doing this really more for all of you out there, as well as for my kids. My oldest is 16. I have three boys, 16, 14, and 10. And I'd like to think that they can learn from this process as well as you all can learn from it as well, too. So we're going to talk about how I got to start my first business and how we've started building the customer basis for that. So what I'm going to do is talk about how I started G3 back in 1993. I was working full-time as the director of the multimedia lab at Virginia Tech, and I had built the lab, and I was the original founder and designed and developed the lab for the university. I had built the architecture computing lab at Virginia Tech for the architecture school, and then I had assisted the engineering school with co-founding the lab for scientific visual analysis. The SciViz lab was one where we had a silicon graphics powered cave that was used for full 3D immersive VR, and this is back in 1989, 1990, and some amazing stuff. And I think we had the fourth silicon graphics powered cave unit in the country. And it was a tremendous time to be a part of the immersive VR kind of environment. VR is finally making a comeback, so it was a great experience for me. And working on interactive multimedia development in the early days was great as well. So I founded the lab for the multimedia lab at Virginia Tech after that. When I graduated with my master's in 1990 and 1991. And it was a great opportunity. I had worked in Chicago with Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. I'd worked on the Barcelona Olympics Pavilion in 1989 for the 1990 Olympics. And there were 600 architects, and there were about a dozen studios, and so there were 3 of us computer users per studio. There were 2 junior users and a senior computer user, and that senior super user oversaw the work that we did as junior users. And so there were 36 of us on the computers at the time for a total of 600 architects. And IBM had the entire second floor of the building, and we were up on the 17th floor, and all the work that we did from the consoles on the floor were relayed downstairs. So when we wanted to print something, we had to actually print and to the plotters, which were on the second floor, and then take the elevators downstairs to go get the drawings. But I was able to sit in on some client meetings. The bank building in LA on Wacker Place was one of the SOM buildings that I worked on. I worked on the original proposal project for it, and it was an amazing opportunity. I got a chance to sit in on client meetings and see how Skidmore, Owings and Merrill did the work that they did. And in fact, one of the major principles that we learned during that stay, they had various glazing systems and cladding systems and foundation systems and structural systems and things like that, and they all really worked together. You could really kind of design a building very quickly because all the pieces kind of fit together. Well, I began to realize that if we built software that way, then we could build software more quickly, repurposing modular components that we reused. And so I began to build software in the same way that they were building buildings. I took the experience that I learned there in Chicago, and I used it to my advantage, and it's been great. In fact, now I actually hold a patent on a dynamic mobile interface solution that is highly secure, that gives me the opportunity to turn what I learned while I was interning with Skidmore into a technology that applied to the technology realm itself. So it's a tremendous opportunity, and I learned a lot. But I really knew that the world of architecture was changing, and the advent of interactive multimedia computing and the MPCs that had come along in the 1991, 1992 range, the desktop PC was going to change everything. And I'm grateful that I was there at the right place at the right time in history. I had my first Macintosh in 1985, just after the 1984 commercial came out, the launch of the Macintosh. I waited about a year. I was in college. I have a bachelor's of fine art in design, and so I was learning about design by computer as early as 1985. By the time I started the company, I had spent almost 10 years working with computers from an early age, not just through college, but I've been doing programming and game development and stuff like that when I was in high school as well. So I had a good foundation. I understood where it was going. I understood about the relationship between engineering and design, and how computers could facilitate computer-based engineering as well as computer-based design. And there was an opportunity to meet a need in the market where there really wasn't a lot of people who knew what that was like. At the time, I think there was a few hundred of us that had been recognized as leading that. In fact, I won a New Media Magazine and Vision Award in 1994 for the work. We won a silver medal, which is second place, and we got beat out by the Yale Medical School simulation for cardiothoracic surgery, which was a tremendous application. I mean, hats off to the guys at Yale. But I and my team won second place for the work that we did in interactive multimedia video, full screen, full motion, hardware assisted video using Radius's Video Vision Studio, and being run full screen, full motion out of Macromedia Director. Something the folks at Macromedia had said couldn't be done, and Kevin Howell was very appreciative to see that happen at Macworld Expo in 1994 when we debuted the solution that we had created, and after we'd won our award. The third place was the folks at MIT for, some application they had done. And so it was great to be up there with the folks at Yale Medical and MIT in the early days. And that 1994 win is what really launched us. We started out doing K through 12 and higher education, digital textbooks. We did mostly conversion work. We had corporate presentations that we began to do work for because these large presentations were just being done by computer, and so we had an opportunity to do some of that as well. And some of our first clients were Eastman Chemical Corporation and FedEx and MCI and IBM and even Apple. And so the great thing is that I got brought in to do some work with Eastman Chemical Corporation. They were using interactive multimedia instruction as a way to help their OSHA safety training requirements, and they took two people from each of the divisions, each of the 20 divisions within Eastman Corporation, and they made a safety group that had 40 people in it, and I helped come in and show them how to organize everything and how to build the training that was necessary, and it was a tremendous success. It saved lives and reduced costs and improved overall company operations in ways that were even still active 20 years after we did that, when I followed up with the folks there. So that was really impressive. The work we did with FedEx involved multi-platform, network-based transfer. We had at the university, we had multiple networks, or a single network of multi types of machines, where we had Unix, and we had the folks at Apple and IBM and others. So we had a lot of different machines on the same network, all sharing data together. We learned a lot of those techniques in the scientific visualization lab, and were able to continue that in the work that we were doing in the multimedia lab, and then further on in the work that we did with at G3. One of the first things that kind of gave me reason to believe that there was a real opportunity for this out there was the fact that MCI and had come through the lab. When we were doing the lab tours, we had about 700 lab tours in the first 3 years. So literally every single one of the Fortune 500 companies came in, and a delegation from almost every of the 118 countries that were part of our allied countries. And so I got a chance to meet people from all over the world. I got a chance to meet everybody from each of the Fortune 500 companies, and it was a tremendous experience. I mean, it was amazing. And so when I went to go start the company, I had a Rolodex of 700 potential leads that was an opportunity for me to reach back out to them. And I was very careful to make sure that I didn't accidentally abused my position at the university. I made sure I followed all the conflict of interest procedures and everything, and we set the company up, and I began to remove myself from the university, and then made sure that we had everything taken care of. So if you're going from an academic environment, make sure you follow up with the folks at the university. There's at Virginia Tech, it was called Internal Audit, and the folks at Internal Audit were tremendous about making sure that none of the resources of any of my labs on campus were used in conjunction with the work that we were doing at the company. We had all of our own equipment, we had our own space. We had former staff members that we hired on as the first employees of the company. So it was great. We did everything right. And doing everything right from the beginning is really very, very important. You have to make sure that there's no conflicts out there, so that you can make sure that you do it right. So, that led us to an opportunity. And when I finally made my transition, we had about 90 days worth of money set aside. And so I knew that I had to make that leap. I had to quit my job. I had fulfilled my 5-year contract with the university, so I was under no obligation to stay. I gave them notice, and I left 5 years and 3 days after I started. So when I left, we had 90 days worth of money, and after that, after 30 days, we had 14 months of backlog of work to do, just by going through the Rolodex for those 700 folks. And we've continued much the same way. We got our first government contract in 1996, and which with the Navy, which led to another government contract opportunity with the Army in 1998. We built the Army Training Information Architecture, ATIA, and and have continued to manage and maintain that system. And then we also went from there. We began working after 9/11 in 2004 and 5 on the site profiler survey tools with Digital Sandbox, who's now recently been acquired since then. But we built the design for the UI for that, which was helping to manage all of the facilities on the critical infrastructure protection list for all their emergency action planning, which was a great project. And after that, we worked with the State Department on the Smart Messaging Portal, which is the system that Colin Powell initiated, that was continued under Condoleezza Rice, and was in place actually at the time when Secretary Clinton was required to use the system. So, ironically, there were servers that both Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice used, but as I recall, those servers were actually in the server rooms at the State Department, not in somebody's bathroom in Colorado or in the basement in New York. So it's important to make that distinction. But the system that we designed, I was one of the architects on the system, and I insisted that we follow the government rules to a T. So every message had to be cleared by 2 people. And originally the State Department didn't like that, because that meant somebody else would have to be privileged to every message content. And but that was the law. And so it's like having 2 nuclear launch keys. Well, this is the way it goes. That's why you have 2 people that have to verify a message. And if the message is verified or not, it goes into an archive that cannot be opened. Once those things are in there, they're encrypted and they're accessible, but for forensic purposes, but you can't just go in and delete them in the State Department system. And that was a key feature of the design that we created for Smart. And the guys in the engineering team did a fantastic job. It's a great solution. It's in place now and throughout the various embassies, I've enjoyed the work that we've done on things like that. It's great to be sort of a footnote to history, but unfortunately, Hillary was supposed to use our servers and didn't, because our servers were impossible to defeat, and she didn't want that. Anyway, after we worked with the State Department, we went on to work with Health and Human Services, where we've been working for much of the last 10 years. There are about 27 systems at Health and Human Services that we've been a part of. We've been a part of about 17 systems overall in DoD. We have the maintenance contract for those DoD systems now. And we continue to work on privately funded efforts in the other companies that we've created, developing commercial technologies. But we do a combination of, we started out in educational, then we did corporate, then we did government and military, and then now we've come back to doing a lot of corporate and educational work as well. We try to keep a balance. Our success is really largely based around having a balance of all of that, and I think that's important. We'll talk more about that, making sure that you have about a 30-year business in no more than one area, and certainly no more than one client. So you don't want too much risk of losing, a major contract to cause you a problem with that. So anyway, that's it for now. That's the kind of path that we took, and we'll talk more about it later on. But I thought ahead of the election, it might be fun to tell everybody about the work that we did with the State Department on the smart messaging system, and the fact that I was actually one of the people that was trying to make sure that the things like what Hillary Clinton didn't happen. And they happened anyway, and I'm glad she's been exposed for it. If either you or I had been guilty of that, we would have gone to jail. But, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to matter. She doesn't seem to be taking any heat for it, and she's likely to be president. So, anyway, good luck to everybody. Vote on November 8th, and I'll have another video for you soon. Thanks.